Good morning, everyone. My name is Glenn Howard. I'm president of the Jamestown Foundation. We're delighted that you're able to join us today or the afternoon if you're in Europe. Our event today is titled Russia's Weaponization of Gas, Repercussion for Global Energy Markets. And we're excited to be discussing this topic. And we have a great selection of speakers for you today. Joining us will be Margarita Stenova, who's known to many of you as a leading expert on Gazprom and energy in Europe. Margarita is a senior fellow at the Jamestown Foundation. Our second speaker will be Svetlana Zalishuk, who's an advisor to CEO Naftogaz and also a former member of the Ukrainian parliament. And last person joining us will be the well-known energy economist Timothy Ash, who works with Blue Bay Asset Management. Now, many of you may be asking us questions today about why are we focusing on that? Well, if you haven't noticed, Europe is facing a severe energy crisis with historically high gas prices and insufficient gas storage levels as winter is looming. As many of you may know, since July, Gazprom has reduced to a minimum its supplies to Europe while at the same time draining its European gas storage facilities. So, they're doing this in order to deliver on its long-term contracts, but it's still at the same time it's draining European facilities. Now, as the heating season begins, Gazprom has continued to maintain very low supply flows to Europe, booking only a third of the Yamal Europe's capacity, and they're not increasing gas transit through Ukraine, which is why we're kind of focusing today on its impact on Ukraine. Meanwhile, shortages of LNG deliveries to Europe are caused by mainly increased demand in Asia. Taking all the scenario with the new government in Germany, and Russia is also applying pressure on Germany and the European Union to certify Nord Stream to the natural gas pipeline, which is nearing completion, and so waiting permission to start operation. We're also seeing Russia is also applying a strategy forcing EU member states to return to strict long-term contracts with Gazprom. And last but not least, they're trying to apply pressure submitting the European Union to changing its energy legislation by forcing to exempt Nord Stream 2 and its onshore connecting pipeline, UGAL, from the EU gas executive. So we're happy that with all this going on, we've got this great panel for you today, and we'll be focusing and discussing on the prospects for certification of the newly completed Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline and its impact on European energy security. So, Margarita, you're going to have to take this on from here and really enlighten us on what's happening, and we look forward to your talk. So get us started, please.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone, and good day to our listeners in Europe. Yes, we are facing an unprecedented energy crisis, and this is why the European Union foreign ministers were meeting yesterday to discuss the energy crisis and discuss measures to counter the effect of it. It doesn't seem that they have agreed on any concrete EU-wide measures, but they have agreed that some of the countries will have to mediate the impact to households in particular. The consensus was around Germany saying we have preferential contracts with Gazprom. We don't need to have a common European storage for gas. Spain insisting on common European storage. Apparently, this is not going to happen. And frankly, in a global market, in a free market, having taken such measure by the European Union may not be the best approach as well. So benchmark wholesales of European prices have rocketed by more than 500% this year. They've reached $2,000 per 1,000 cubic meters this month. And since natural gas represents 1/4 of European Union's overall energy consumption, this is a big impact on energy prices in general. The main problem is that the gas storage in Europe remained at lower than usual levels for most of the summer and most of the fall. That sent the market into a frenzy. It reacted like a stock market would react to an unexpected event. This is why we see such high levels of gas prices. Reportedly, Gazprom storage in northwestern Europe holds almost 70% less gas than a year ago. And a year ago was a pandemic year. So keeping in Europe 70% less gas in storage done in the pandemic here is a really something that needs to be stressed and needs to be underlined where the energy crisis is coming from. The German gas storages that Gazprom holds are as good as empty, as one green politician put it. And the energy experts now are saying that given these extraordinary low inventory levels, there is a risk that Gazprom would not be able to meet its contractual obligations during the winter. Why the shortage? Why is the crisis happening right now? There are several objective factors, and experts are talking about global shortages of supply, reduced production because of the pandemic. But if we look at this chart, by the US Energy Information Administration, we're going to see that production has not been reduced as much, certainly not in the United States. The levels of the United States here in blue in 2020 during the pandemic were slightly reduced. In Russia, they were reduced a little bit more, but not as significantly. And in Saudi Arabia as well, oil and gas, you can see the darker color is oil and the lighter color is gas, was reduced a little bit, but not too significantly. What has been reduced is Russian gas supply to Europe. And we can see another graph by Bloomberg that is telling us what were the levels in 2019 in October, in the pandemic, October 2020, and now. And what we see here is 35% less gas supplies to Europe compared to 2019 by Gazprom alone. This leaves the storages at the level they are at the moment. We see they are today at 77%. It's climbing a little bit faster now. It used to be just a week ago at 71%. And we can see that the biggest storages are in the Western countries, Italy, Germany, France, the Netherlands. And this yellow line is telling us where the shortages are occurring. And we see Germany is one of those places. Since Gazprom controls 25% of the gas storage facilities in Germany, this presents a very big danger that if a cold spell comes in February, even if Gazprom pushes a lot of gas through the pipelines to reach Germany, there will be choke points, there will be blockages, there will be bottlenecks that are going to prevent customers from receiving this gas. It's not going to be received so easily by households and by thermal power plants, which is going to cause people to stay in the cold. These are the levels of European gas storage by country. We see that those countries that don't depend on Russian gas supplies, they have managed to fill their gas storages at quite high level. We see the United Kingdom, Poland, with diversified gas supplies through LNG. We can see Spain and France and Belgium and Latvia also have high levels. But at the same time, we see Bulgaria, it's a lower level. Most importantly, Germany is at only 71 level today, and Austria at 57. Baumgarten storage in Austria is one of the biggest that Gazprom uses. So that said, and then talking about the need to build a new pipeline, this is when the Gazprom officials are going to make the case for the new pipeline. As soon as the crunch starts in a cold spell in January or February, they're going to say, see, we told you in winter peaks, during the high consumption, we need more pipelines because these pipelines that we have right now are not enough. The real reason for the shortage would be that the storages are not filled to capacity, but they're going to claim that they need more capacity. So looking at what pipeline capacity Gazprom has right now in Europe, Without Nord Stream 2 and without the Turk Stream, they have, I'm sorry, this is not the right one. They have 95 BCM of extra capacity without these two pipelines. And this is calculated by the entry points to Europe. In Germany, Finland, Estonia, you see Lithuania, from Belarus to Lithuania to Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania. All these points combined, giving us a export capacity to the European Union of 253 BCM, while this data is from 2018, but it hasn't changed too much. At the moment, Gazprom delivers about 168, 170 BCM measured in European measures, European BCM to the European Union. So almost 100 BCM of spare capacity. And if we add the two new pipelines, Turk Stream is already operational and Nord Stream 2 is already constructed, but it's not certified and cannot be put in operation yet. The spare capacity of Gazprom is going to be 170 BCM, while it delivers in European measures 185 to Europe and Turkey combined. So what this pipeline is doing is directing the entire transit from Ukraine to Turk Stream 2, Turk Stream 2, and Nord Stream 2. Ukraine in 2018 had transited about 86 BCM of gas. Turk Stream is 33, Nord Stream 2 is 55. This is precisely the entire transit that Russia used to have through Ukraine going in a different direction. But the biggest problem is these two pipelines coming from two directions, from the south and from the north, like a pincer movement. They're squeezing the Central and Eastern European countries in Gazprom's grip. And this is going to create not only control of how much gas these countries are going to receive from Gazprom, but also it's going to lead to inability of those countries to develop the regional gas markets, to utilize all the pipelines and interconnectors that they already have in order to have supplies from alternative sources. Because the pipelines as they are right now, they're coming from east to west, and these pipelines are really big from the east to west. They're like arteries in the body, they're huge. When you start delivering gas from the west to east direction, the gas is going to go through smaller pipelines. And here, the choke points, the blockages, the bottlenecks are going to increase, which is going to require a lot more investment by the European countries. Okay, I will stop the sharing, and I will add two more things to this picture. Yes, there is a global increase in demand, specifically in Asia, since LNG now is going mostly to Asia. China reduced its buying, actually stopped buying coal from Australia, and also started pursuing its carbon reduction targets. So China needs more gas, and it's obvious on the LNG market. We had a cold weather at the start of 21 that depleted the stocks. We had rising prices in the spring that put off the traders from buying gas to sell later in the year. They're kind of waiting on the price to go down. And there are limited supplies from Norway because of maintenance issues and production reduction in the Netherlands. In fact, Europe declined, European gas production declined by 7% in 2020, but Norway is starting to produce more gas now. And then there was also reduction of other energy sources such as wind power. But the main reason is these factors are normal. They are inherited in the energy strategy of every country and every union. They happen, cold winters, gas supplies going to Asia. This is all calculated within the energy strategies of the countries of the European continent and the European Union. What was not expected is such a dramatic reduction of gas supply by Gazprom to Europe during the summer, starting in July, when the agreement was made between Angela Merkel and the Biden administration not to put Nord Stream 2 company under sanctions. In other words, to allow Nord Stream 2 to be completed. Ever since this agreement, we are seeing escalation of pressure on the European countries, on EU members. This is very clearly and hinted by Russian officials that the purpose is to certify Nord Stream 2. So the use of energy for political purposes is not new for Russia. In Russian foreign policy, it was actually openly proclaimed in the 2003 energy strategy of the Russian Federation for the period up to 2020, which states that the fuel and energy complex of Russia is the basis of economic development, a tool of domestic and foreign policy making. There is absolutely nothing hidden in this. What Russia is doing now, according to experts, Russian officials, is a so-called Italian strike. They slow down deliveries. This is not going to jeopardize contracts, at least for the time being, but the system is going to be undermined, and this is what we're seeing now. Thank you. Glenn, you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Margarita. That was a great kind of overview, and we're already getting requests from the audience for a copy of your slides. And if anybody has a question, would like a copy of the slides present today, please send us an email at pubs@jamestown.org, and we'll try to get those to you. So thank you for that excellent kind of overview, Margarita, of the situation in Europe. And our next panelist will be Svetlana Zalishuk, and she will be discussing the Ukrainian perspective and how it's affecting Ukraine today. Svetlana, greetings to everyone in Kiev.
Yes, hello, good day and good afternoon to everyone, to our viewers and participants. Thank you so much for organizing this event. I think it cannot be overestimated for Ukraine in particular. And of course, I would like to give you the Ukrainian perspective on the Nord Stream 2. For us, since the very beginning, it was crystal clear that this project was an element of, if you want, Kremlin's geopolitical master plan, as I call it. I regret to say, by the way, that probably the democratic world does not have such a master plan today, but Russia obviously does. And illegal annexation of Georgia in 2008, and illegal annexation of Crimea and further occupation of Donbass, and its war in Syria, and interference of Putin into the US elections, Germany, France elections, and other EU countries' elections. Massive disinformation campaigns around the world, including, by the way, today's pandemic, and poisoning of former Russian citizens on the territories of the Western countries, and poisoning of Alexei Navalny, of course, and persecution of the political opposition in Russia, and total censorship in media. And I can continue. As I see it, Nord Stream 2 is an integral part of these events and actions, which are not simply someone's, wrong or bad decision making. It's a strategy. And it's aimed, obviously, not just against Ukraine, what some European leaders prefer to think in my mind, dangerous complacency, but it's against the West, and it's against Euro-Atlantic democratic project. But of course, it's also against Ukraine, which is bringing this democratic project too close to Russian borders, and that's why we are paying the biggest price in this battle. This is how I see the context in which Kremlin is trying to launch the new pipeline, the Nord Stream 2. But also, of course, I would like to mention that it's not a new practice for Putin to use gas as hybrid weapon. We have experienced it. Nord Stream 2's owner Gazprom has a long history of cutting and restricting supplies to Europe and Ukraine for political reasons. I'd like to mention some of them. It was in 2006, after, by the way, Orange Revolution. It was in 2009, after Ukraine supported Georgia, after Russians' invasion in Georgia. It was in 2014, when Gazprom cut supplies to Ukraine as a punishment for Ukraine's European choice and European policies pursued since after. It's obvious that today Gazprom curtails supplies to Europe in an attempt to coerce Europe to accept Nord Stream 2 operations at Gazprom terms. Yesterday, it seems to me that I think that everyone has heard this statement, and he made it crystal clear what is the real nature of the high prices on the European market. They are basically the hostages of Putin's blackmail to receive the certification for the Nord Stream 2 as soon as possible, bypassing EU rules. And one might say that high prices cannot be attributed solely to Gazprom, and it's hard to disagree with that. There are many objective factors, and I think that Margarita has generously and kindly outlined all the factors that are there affecting the European energy prices. But we also cannot ignore and underestimate particular Kremlin's role in this process. Now, I'd like to say that during the last month, we as Ukrainian government, and I think EU, US politicians and experts and journalists collectively have outlined many convincing arguments of why Nord Stream 2 is dangerous for EU energy security and Ukraine security. But it's also obvious for me that we need something else to stop it, because these arguments are not enough. It's not to be convincing, to be guided by the values, to counteract authoritarian government is definitely not enough. So I think that the main question of today's conference, but also today in general for the stakeholders, for the decision makers, what can we do? What legal and political instruments do we have to stop this dangerous pipeline? Because as I'll refer to German philosopher, as Hegel has said, to have things differently, you have to do something differently. So yes, I would like to give several points on what should and can we do, but let me ask you, Glenn, do I have time for that, or should I come back to that in my second intervention during the questions? What do you say?
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, thank you. So I would say this, that one of the most important things is that it's not fait accompli, not for Ukraine, not for Russia, not for EU, and not for US. Russia still has to certify the pipeline. Yes, the battle is lost, they finished it, but the war is not lost, because in order to make it operational, they have to still get the certification from the independent German regulator. Ukraine has to play a significant role in the certification process. EU will have a pivotal role in the approving the certification granted by the Germany, decided by Germany. And US, in my mind, will have to prove the role of the democratic ally and to prove its declared position that if Russia uses Nord Stream 2 as a geopolitical weapon, then US will apply sanctions and proactive actions. Now, I'm very happy to inform you that Ukraine actually, what we are doing, Naftogaz, my company, and our partners, our operator of gas transport system of Ukraine, last week made a submission to the Germany energy regulator to participate into the certification process. And we argue in our submission to the German regulator that Nord Stream 2 endangers European solidarity, European security of supplies. It's anti-competitive, it will not bring additional gas volumes to Europe, and it serves no justifiable commercial purpose. Also, we argue that there are gas market rules that apply to all other pipelines operating in the European Union. We argue that those rules have to be also obligatory to be applied to the Nord Stream 2. These are three cornerstones. It's ownership unbundling, it's the third-party access and non-discriminatory, transparent and cost-reflective regulated tariffs. We believe as a country, as Naftogaz, that Nord Stream 2 at this point do not meet those requirements by EU regulation. And that gives us a legal and political avenue actually to challenge their position to be certified. Now, when it comes to EU, by the, once again, European regulation, they will have some time, they will have a particular role to approve the certification process. And we as a country also cooperate with the European Commission and European politicians to make sure that they are aware of those arguments that, that we have. And last point that I wanted to say that because we also have probably a lot of US American participants, that Biden administration signed this statement together with Germany. And I'll repeat myself that if Russian, I'll quote part of the statement, that if Russia uses pipeline as a geopolitical weapon, it will be met with proactive actions. I think it's a high time because I believe that previously waiving the sanctions on Nord Stream 2 AG in May 2021 and current inaction in this regard, it undermines the US administration's commendable focus on battling the Kremlin strategic corruption and the threat it poses to the world's democracies. And allowing Gazprom to finish and operationalize its kleptocratic project, Nord Stream 2, means no less than gifting to the authoritarian leader Vladimir Putin an extra tool to undermine democracies across Europe. So I call us for all the stakeholders for proactive actions. We still have a chance to challenge Nord Stream 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, for sharing that perspective. And it's a very dangerous perspective for Ukraine, and appreciate you kind of highlighting all these games going on with the certification process that's going on in Germany as well. So bringing us further, kind of sharing kind of a European perspective on this and the markets is Timothy Ash. So Timothy, kind of tell us what is going on from your perspective on the region. And we're getting a lot of questions from the audience. Kind of people are asking about what steps Europe and Germany are taking to access gas from the Med, Central Asia, and LNG. So maybe you could add that as well, but please take us from here.
Yeah, sure. Apologies at the start. In your intro, you very kindly described me as an energy economist or energy. I'm not, right? My area of expertise, I guess I'm a Ukraine, emerging Europe sort of geopolitical guy who looks at the impacts on countries and markets of various geopolitical overlays, including energy. So I'm not going to oversell myself or allow you to oversell me as something that I'm not. But anyway, I will focus on the key players, you know, Russia, Ukraine, Europe, and the US, I think, in what I'm going to say. But I'll start off right at the beginning. And just to reiterate, I think what's already been said, from an economics perspective, right? There is no economic or environmental justification for Nord Stream 2. Let's just set that out right at the start. And there isn't, because Nord Stream 2 doesn't add extra capacity, doesn't add extra transit capacity. It takes transit capacity from Ukraine. I mean, there's already been said, you know, historically, Ukraine, well, its gas transit system has a capacity max about 140 BCM. I think only 50 BCM is contracted this year. So there's like 90 BCM spare that essentially has been taken up by Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2, you could make the case that a business case for Nord Stream 2 by Gazprom in terms of its aim is to take 2 billion transit fees from Ukraine to Gazprom and Nord Stream 2 is the entity. But I think ultimately, the objective of Nord Stream 2, as has already been mentioned, is to screw Ukraine. It's to make life as difficult as possible for Ukraine and to take that 2 billion transit fee away from it. Now, it's interesting, the Germans have argued, this economic and business rationale from it. Absolutely don't agree with that. I think they've been disingenuous there. I think if they made the case that Nord Stream 2 is justified for energy security or energy transit security, I could kind of get it, right? Because if you think about it, in the pre-Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, pre-Turk Stream, Ukraine was transiting 2/3 of European gas supplies. Now, Ukraine has been through a crazy 7-8 years. We've had a revolution, we've had annexation of Crimea, we've had a war, or we continue to have a war in the East. The Germans could perhaps say, we don't really like the fact that our energy transit is dependent on Ukraine remaining stable. And we'd rather like to diversify north and south and reduce our dependence on Ukraine. I get that, that's fair enough. There's a key problem, I think, with that argument, though. And the key problem with it is diversifying out of Ukraine doesn't make European security, Europe safer. And I think the reason is you've got to ask yourself, why is Putin doing this? And Putin's doing it essentially to increase his ability to intervene and destabilize Ukraine. Roughly, Russia generates about $60 billion of revenue in gas supplies through Ukraine a year. It depends on the gas price, but think about 60 billion. Ukraine gets about 2 billion transit fees. Now, if you go back to 2009 and the gas price war that we had there, I think the Russians quickly realized that destabilizing Ukraine to the point that energy supply through Ukraine to Europe was under threat was not a very clever move, because it made Russia perceive as an unreliable energy supply and would drive diversification, right? Now, as long as Russia is dependent on Ukraine for gas transit, it needs Ukraine to be relatively stable. If you take Ukraine out of that whole gas transit scenario, I think Putin will try and destabilize Ukraine to deliver on his longer term objectives. And we saw that in the last month or so with Putin's essay on Ukrainian identity, or the lack of Ukrainian identity. So I think taking the gas transit business away from Ukraine makes the chance of a big Russia-Ukraine conflict that much more significant, right? So I think that's the kind of 2 points I'd make there in terms of the transit through Ukraine. In terms of Ukraine and then the individual players, on Ukraine, I think it's really important to say that Europe's facing a gas crisis this winter. I don't actually think Ukraine is particularly. Ukraine can survive without Russian gas transit, right? It's proven to be incredibly durable. Ukraine saw this crisis coming a decade ago. It's undertaken, massive energy conservation efficiency measures. Ukrainian gas consumption has gone from 70 BCM to 35. As has already been mentioned, it produces about 20 BCM a year itself. It's pumped about 18 BCM into storage. It can probably get through the 35 BCM domestic demand this winter, whatever the Russians do, right? So it's durable in terms of energy supply. And the macro reforms we've seen in Ukraine, again, over the last 7 years, means that even if it totally lost the gas transit business, totally lost the 2 billion, it's not a game changer for Ukraine. It's gone from a position where it was running a huge current account and fiscal deficit in 2014. A large part of that was because of energy imports and energy subsidies because of naphtha gas. It's now got 28 billion in FX reserves. Its currency is stable. The economy looks very durable. I would even argue that gas transit is bad for Ukraine. This business has been corrupting. If you think back to Energo, this conduit between Firtash and Gazprom, historically, gas transit fees have been used to bribe Ukrainian officials and undermine the Ukrainian statehood. Ukraine's proven that it can survive without that. It can do other things. Gas transit is a low value added business. It can focus on, as naphtha gas actually is, focus on increasing domestic production to be self-sufficient and an exporter of gas. It should focus on other industries, aside from an industry that has been used as a lever of patronage and subjugation of Ukraine by Russia. You know, it's used this gas transit to undermine Ukraine from within. So I think I wouldn't overplay the economic impact of the loss of gas transit and Nord Stream 2 on Ukraine. But for me, the critical thing is going back. Nord Stream 2 makes Ukraine's security situation much more difficult and much more dangerous. And it's quite notable that Putin has been prepared to come out and say, you know, quite recently, what would happen if there was an attack on the Ukrainian gas transport system? A decade ago, he wouldn't have dared to say that, because an attack on the Ukrainian gas transit system would have undermined Russia's ability to supply gas to Europe. And again, it would have banged the line that Russia actually is an unreliable supplier of energy to Europe. But now he feels emboldened because Russia is less dependent on transit through Ukraine. He feels able to be more decisive and aggressive in his words and actions, I would imagine, towards Ukraine. Just focusing on Russia, I've looked at Ukraine, on Russia in particular. I take issue a little bit with what's been said previously about Russia's use of energy as a tool for geopolitical advantage. Actually, what's quite interesting is, you know, throughout the Cold War and most of the post-war period, aside from the 2009 gas price crisis, I would argue that Russia really avoided. It wanted to be seen as a reliable supplier, because, you know, $60 billion is a big export tick item, right? So it was very measured and quite defensive. And something's changed. I mean, now Putin is out in the open. You know, it's interesting that the Americans and the Germans agreed on a sanctions regime if Russia used Nord Stream 2 to take geopolitical advantage. It clearly is. I mean, Putin has openly now said that if Nord Stream 2 comes on stream, we can increase gas supplies to Europe by 10%. He's using it already for leverage. So something has changed, and I kind of think what's changed is the gas supply to Europe, gas transit, whatever you want to call it, the $60 billion industry for Russia was the golden goose, right? I mean, the Russians didn't want to do anything to kind of cook the goose that was laying this golden egg. They were very, very nervous about this idea of being called an unreliable gas supplier. I think the carbon transition's changed that. I think the Russians have realized this business on a 5 to 10 year period is dead. You know, it's dying out. Europe, whatever happens, is diversifying to renewables. And I think Moscow thinks that if there is geopolitical advantage to be taken by energy, it's now. So to deliver on its objectives, its clear objectives towards Ukraine, its advantages now, and particularly this winter. I mean, it's already been mentioned. I mean, you know, I'm not going to say that Russia is fully behind the gas crisis that we're seeing in Europe at the moment. It's the carbon transition, the mismanagement of the carbon transition. It's a surge in energy demand in Asia because of COVID, bounce back. It's a lack of, I mean, a disastrous energy policy in Europe that has not, you know, the UK closed its gas storage in 2018. Disastrous kind of decision with hindsight. So all those things have come together, but Russia hasn't helped matters. Russia hasn't, at Europe's hour of need, when, you know, Europe would have thought its partner in energy supply would have come to its rescue, Putin has not gone out of his way to help Europe out. So something's changed. Russia is prepared to play the energy card because I think it knows this business is dead anyway. This is a pretty difficult period we're going through. Moscow's not going to let its foot off Europe's neck. But I think long term, the message is Europe will realize that the loser long term is Russia, because Europe will accelerate diversification away from Russian oil and gas. You know, renewables, US LNG, whatever it is. But that's certainly the long-term story. Russia is the loser from this. Just looking at two other things, and I'll end. You know, I'll try and push through very quickly. Europe and the US. I mean, Europe's in the end is such a big loser, and it's already been mentioned. Democracy is a huge loser. I mean, Nord Stream 2 will give Putin a short-term win. It's a win for kleptocracy. The fact that so many European politicians were bought off by company directorships of Russian state-owned enterprises and also Nord Stream 2, that our elites, our European elites, couldn't fit everything together, couldn't fit energy security, security itself, and markets together and think through an energy policy that was sustainable and resilient. I think is damning. It's damning, and an over-reliance on free markets. You know, energy, like food, is a basic form of security, something we all need. And to leave ourselves totally reliant on free markets is a devastating indictment, I think, of Europe and the European Union and the UK as well. And Putin is right in saying that. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. We are responsible ourselves for the position we've got ourselves in. But kleptocracy wins, democracy loses. That's a terrible outcome from all this. Now, finally, the US. It's a bit weird, I find, that, you know, and actually maybe the Europeans as well, that no one's calling Putin out for any of this. I mean, Jake Sullivan, I mean, his comment that, you know, we're not quite sure if the Russians are behind all this, right? I mean, Jake, it's crystal clear that the Russians are not working to help Europe out of this crisis. And it's crystal clear that they're using it to take geopolitical advantage. Why would you not say that? Now, either it's embarrassment that, you know, Europe and the US have got ourselves into this position where there's no strategy at all, and we're in a desperate situation as we head into the winter, or it's a recognition of how dreadful our position is, but we have no options. Essentially, Nord Stream 2 has to get approved. Otherwise, we're going to see Europe go cold this winter, massive supply disruptions across the board, fertilizer, food production, you name it. I mean, Nord Stream 2 will get certified because it has to, because we've left ourselves in this dreadful situation. We have to learn from it, essentially. I mean, that's the reality of this. And I think, actually, interestingly, the lack of commentary from the US administration, there might be a bit of something in this is letting the Europeans stew on it. You know, Merkel decided to go again off with Nord Stream 2 against best advice of the US. Let them realize what they got themselves into, and let them realize that, you know, that the real threat is from Russia, from energy security and broader security, and they need to diversify and diversify quickly. So, and obviously the Americans hopefully think that that means more LNG. So they ultimately hope they benefit from it. But ultimately, you know, in the end, the Americans have some responsibility here. I mean, Trump. Hey, can you hear me still? Just final point, and I will disappear. Final point. The US is also partly responsible for this, right? Trump was way too aggressive on Germany. You know, auto tariffs, you know, you name it. And he boxed Merkel into a corner on Nord Stream 2. Merkel didn't really want to do Nord Stream 2, right? I mean, East German heritage, she got Putin, she understood it. But she didn't want to be pushed around by the Americans, and especially not if she didn't think the Americans would be genuine. She thought they essentially didn't care about anything. They just want to sell LNG. So Trump was way too aggressive and pushed the Germans into a corner where, to prove their national security independence, they went ahead with Nord Stream 2. Disastrous resulting effect. And then the Biden administration, I think because Trump had been so hard on Germany, the Biden administration were desperate to get the relationship back with Germany back on track. And hence the sanctions rollover, there's no other way to describe it. It was possible to pull Nord Stream 2 back, right? And whatever reason, the Biden team decided, you know, too late, whatever, the relationship with Germany is more important, and whatever. So anyway, I've ranted on for a long time. I'll end there and give the floor to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to some of the questions now from the audience. But Svetlana, I wanted to ask you, from the Ukrainian perspective, what would you want the Biden administration to do now in regard to Nord Stream 2? What specifically type of recommendations should they pursue? I mean, would it be helpful to have Amos Hochstein, who's working now, back for the administration? I mean, to have him come to Ukraine? I mean, is there more symbolic cheerleading by the United States needed to support Ukraine? What do you want?
Thank you for this question. So first of all, I would like to mention that Ukraine was extremely appreciative of bipartisan support of Nord Stream 2 sanctions by the Congress when they were included 2 years ago in the defense bill and voted in 2019. It actually delayed the completion of the Nord Stream 2 for more than a year. Now, there are a number of sanction legislation initiatives in Congress, and we still enjoy, in my mind, bipartisan support of those initiatives. And there is a possibility for Congress to oblige the administration to impose the sanctions against Nord Stream 2. That will be knocked down for the pipeline until at least until they will meet all the European requirements, until they will operate as a reliable, predictable pipeline as any other pipeline. So that would be a very concrete step that Congress can do. Now, the administration has already the opportunities, the legal instruments to apply the sanctions. These are 2 laws. It's a so-called KAATSA law that is there, that has been voted by Congress. And this is PISKA, this is the names of the legislation law that also gives the administration the instruments to apply those sanctions. So there is, by the way, it's not Ukraine who developed this formula that Nord Stream 2 can be used as a geopolitical weapon. I think it was invention or the formula that has been produced by the Biden administration. So at the moment, of course, it's up to administration and Congress and us to qualify what is the weaponization of the Nord Stream 2, right? But we hear from experts, we hear from economists, we hear from decision makers that they are already trying to bypass the, first of all, European legislation, and second of all, they are using these blackmail instruments to freeze Europe and to get the to increase the prices and to get what they want. So I think it's up to the administration to act. They have all the reasons and all the instruments to do so.
Let me ask the panel, what impact will it have with the new German government and kind of this, you have these threats by Russia with the gas storage, and where does the German government and kind of the disarray and Bonn with the new government, how does that affect kind of Europe's ability to react and Germany's ability to react to these challenges?
Timothy, do you want to answer this question?
Anybody? Yeah, please.
Okay, the new German government is just being formed at the moment, and it's going to have a 3-party coalition. One of them are the Social Democrats, then the Free Democrats, and the Green Party. The Green Party has been very much against the nuclear power plants in Germany, and under that pressure and public pressure as well, these nuclear power plants are being closed down. Soon they're going to stop operating completely. The Free Democrats are insisting at the moment to extend the life of some of the reactors until more renewable energy sources are developed. But the Green Party is very much against. At the same time, the Green Party is very much clear about Russia's role in energy, in undermining energy security of the European continent. So it's a kind of a contradictory position. Germany does have a problem to calculate what kind of capacities they need to meet their energy needs in the future once the nuclear power plants are closed down, but at the same time, they don't want to be, as the Green Party says, dependent on Russia because Russia is an unreliable supply of gas. So it is going to be difficult for them to make those energy decisions. On the policy level, I don't think that they have a choice now to give up Nord Stream 2. But I have to say something here that very few people are aware of. The advanced booking of the capacities that are going to come, volumes that are going to come through Nord Stream 2 have been concluded several years ago. And most of the gas that is coming through Nord Stream 2 is not going to stay in Germany. In fact, only 9.9 BCM, only about 10 BCM of gas is staying in Germany. The rest is going towards the Czech Republic to supply customers in Central and Eastern Europe. So what does that tell us? Germany is going to be content in having about 65 BCM of gas received from the Nord Stream 2 corridor. And the rest is going to continue going through Ukraine. This is the calculation, 55 from Nord Stream 1 and about 10 from Nord Stream 2. And I think that that calculation has been there for a while, considering that the European Court of Justice denied the connecting pipeline of PAL to use full capacity. It has to use half of its capacity. That decision is going to be implemented as a precedent to UGAL that connects Nord Stream 2 with the European gas network. So that leaves us with NEL together at about 65 BCM delivered through Nord Stream corridor instead of 110. And I think that's going to be the eventual compromise. Probably the pipeline is going to be certified. Given that nobody in Germany now can say no, we cannot do that. The public support for Nord Stream 2 is high, and that's going to reflect the political opinions. But at the same time, they have to implement European regulations and European laws and pretty much reduce the capacity, reduce the volumes that can be transferred through both pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2.
We had a question further, and I don't know if you want to take this, Margarita, and you partly answered the question about what to make of the Green Party comments on NS2 certification. And you kind of indicated that they would be very much opposed to it. But how will the Green Party react if they're in a coalition that includes the SPD? How will they react to that? Will they go along? Will they be, for the sake of unity, or will they be kind of continue to adhere to their opposition to Nord Stream 2? Who wants to answer that?
I can answer. I can give a short comment. We know already that there is one line in this preliminary coalition agreement which concerns Nord Stream 2. And that line is that European energy law letter and spirit should be applied to all of the pipelines operating on the German territory. So I think that was a proposal of the Green Party. But what does it say us? That obviously there will be a battle within this certification process, and there will be the battle within whether Nord Stream 2 is meeting all the EU regulations. So because on that, the decision depends on whether it will be certified and whether it will become operational. Now, however, having said that, I would like to underline that the specificity of the certification process goes like this. So now German energy regulator has like 4 months to decide to draft its opinion, whether it meets all the requirements or not. Then European Commission has another from 2 to 4 months to say whether it does meet those requirements or not. And then German regulator again has another 2 months to form its final decision. So altogether, the mathematics tells us that it approximately will take 10 months, right? But the role of the government to provide their decision, their opinion with regards to commissioning of the launching of the Nord Stream 2 ends up on the 8th of December. So they have this deadline to make their opinion of how the Nord Stream 2, whether it should work or not, and how should it function. So the new government basically won't have immediate legal avenues, instruments to influence the functioning of the Nord Stream 2. So we know that there are different political positions of social democrat parties and free Democrats and Green Party. But after the certification process has started, the new government basically won't have that much of a role in that process. So that's why I would like to focus our attention that it's a very high time now to act for the European Commission, for the member states in EU, and for US with those sanctions legislation, because these are the only, this legal battle kind of and a sanction approach are the only two avenues to stop or delay the Nord Stream 2 in its current state.
Does anybody else have any want to weigh in on that? Okay. We got a question from John Ramberg, who's asking, would you agree that European customers' preference for dealing in spot prices versus long-term contracts is also a factor here? Does anybody want to take that?
I think it is. Yeah, Timothy, go.
Go ahead, Timothy.
Look, I mean, I'm in the UK, right? And you know, I lived through the Thatcher era, right? And free markets, unfettered free markets were allowed to rule. And sure, I'm sure individual suppliers would love to trade spot, but you know, countries have to think about long-term energy security in the end, right? And it's not just about day trading. And look at all those day traders in the UK gas market are now out of business, right? I mean, this is serious stuff, you know, energy and food supply. I mean, countries need to think long term, and I think there's a lot of logic by having long-term gas supply contracts. Again, I think personally, I think Putin has something there, right? I mean, I think it's not an unreasonable observation on his part, and what we're seeing in the UK now is a result of unfettered markets and very weak regulators and very weak policymakers who have failed to have long-term insight or forethought.
I think the main problem is we have one dominant supply of gas in Europe, Gazprom, that delivers almost 48% of the imported gas to the European continent. More diversification is definitely needed. Somebody asked the question, what is Europe doing to diversify supplies from Central Asia, from East Mediterranean? This should be on the agenda, and it should be pushed forward, and it should be helped. The process should be helped, because what we see now with the Southern Gas Corridor, for example, the gas that is coming from the Caspian Sea to the Balkans, Turkey, Greece, and from there to Italy, this gas, very little part of it is coming to Bulgaria regardless of the contract. Only 25% of what is supposed to be delivered to Bulgaria is being delivered, because Russia is suffocating the market with take-or-pay clause. And punishment for that. So if the country takes gas from alternative suppliers, they're punished by Gazprom. And at the same time, there are no regulations by the European Commission to look into the Balkan pipeline, the Turk Stream 2 pipeline, and regulate it the way they should regulate every external pipeline in the country. It is connecting a Russian pipeline. It is replacing the Trans-Balkan pipeline that was coming from Ukraine, Moldova, and Romania to Bulgaria, Turkey, and Greece. And it's not a new, it's not an old pipeline. It's not a fait accompli. It's not a grandfather situation. It has to be regulated. Gazprom should not be allowed to use it at full capacity. And I don't see absolutely any movement on the European Commission part to do so. Maybe because there is no Poland or Ukraine to file a complaint in that regard. But somebody really needs to file a complaint, and this situation should be looked into. So the long-term contracts are very important tool. And most of the countries in Eastern Europe do have long-term contracts with Gazprom. Actually in Western Europe as well. These contracts are at lower prices, and if they are not about to expire, those countries continue to pay the lower prices for Gazprom gas at the moment. But the contracts of Serbia, for example, and Moldova expired, and now they're faced with completely new conditions by Gazprom. Instead of paying $230 per 1,000 cubic meters, they are pushed and they're forced to pay $790. So the indexation of gas supplies that used to be by the price of oil in the past, and now it's predominantly about 70% by the price of gas, the spot market, is being used by Gazprom to push very rigid contracts that are pretty much market priced and market oriented. So what is the point of long-term contracts if they're going to secure supply but not really secure the prices that are going to be next year? Why should Moldova pay for 10 years ahead $790 per 1,000 cubic meters when the price for next year probably is going to go down? In any event, Gazprom is using all of these situations to make money. And I absolutely support long-term delivery contracts for LNG, even if the price is a little higher at the negotiation point, because that's what Poland did and that's what Lithuania did. And they are not in so much trouble as other countries in Western Europe that relied completely on the free flow of LNG from one place to another.
Anybody you want to? What would be, it's interesting, this part of the discussion today, U.S. LNG exports to Europe have kind of come up. Does anybody want to kind of address what is the United States role with this LNG exports, and kind of how is the Biden administration going to champion that, or and then throw into the mix the carbon emissions reductions and the goals that they've set in place for 2030? Does anybody want to kind of address that?
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly. I mean, LNG needs infrastructure. I mean, I've been looking a little bit around this for different places like Turkey and Poland, and one of the constraints is, it takes a bit of time to build LNG terminals that you need a bit of investment, and at the moment, I think there's been a shortage of forward thinking on this, and obviously the price differential between US LNG and European prices until very recently was a constraint on development. It didn't seem to make economic sense when you were investing to bring in a US product that was a lot more expensive. But now it looks certainly advantageous. I think there'll be a huge interest in building the infrastructure to allow US LNG into and others as well. I mean, not just LNG. There's plenty of LNG development coming out of the Middle East that could perhaps help Europe, and also think about the Mediterranean, where there seems to be plenty of new sources of gas. North Africa, Israel, Lebanon, off the coast of Cyprus, etc. But just to support what's already been said, it's about diversification. It's about reducing reliance on Russia, and I think the big conclusion from this winter will be that process has to accelerate.
I have a question here to me that says that in a letter to Financial Times on 20th of October stated that Russia is fulfilling all its contracts, and it was confirmed by Angela Merkel. And I said that yes, Russia is fulfilling its current contracts at the moment. But I'm also pointing to a dramatic reduction of Russian gas supply to Europe since July, and we saw the graphs that compare the regular deliveries in 2019 and the deliveries now that are lower even compared to the pandemic year. So which is it, supply at near record level or dramatic reduction of supply? Well, it's not supply at record level. Certainly not supply at record level. The delivering on contracts at the moment, Russia is doing through using the storage facilities in Europe where it kept the gas to deliver on those contracts, but not filling them up. Every gas company knows, a long-term supply of pipeline gas knows very well that the season to fill up the facilities, the storage, is from May to October. And this is the time where deliveries continue. The traders buy a lot of gas, they store it in these storages, and after that, it's being used during the heating season. Russia is not doing this. It is not a contractual obligation per se, but it is an obligation of everybody who has dominant position to supply gas to any country through pipelines. LNG does not, they don't have this obligation, but pipelines are constructed there with the agreement of those countries. Those pipelines go through territories of different countries with the understanding that there will be enough gas when winter comes. And this is the condition that Russia is not delivering on, and they call it Italian strike. What does that mean? Italian strike is when the workers are doing all their duties, they fulfill their contractual obligations, but they are not really working in a way to secure, to prepare for work for tomorrow, to secure more production, to do what is needed to be done by the job. The result is they're fulfilling contracts, but they're undermining the system. Eventually, the production starts slowing down and it can collapse. This is what Russia is doing at the moment, delivering on contracts as much as they can and for as long as they can, because I don't think they will be able to deliver on contracts by the end of the year. If the capacities that were booked on Monday are still so low for November, I don't see how Russia is going to be able to deliver on contracts, even for this year, for January and February.
Well, we have a question from the audience. Do you expect prices to go down significantly after NS2 certification? And perhaps someone can answer that question, but also what happens if Europe, like the United States, kind of has we're having a very warm autumn this year. So that's also affecting kind of consumption trends.
It's all market conditions, isn't it? But when the winters became very warm a couple of years ago in Asia, all the extra LNG gas that was usually going to Asia turned around and went to Europe. And the price from $8 per 1 million British thermal units went down to 5. During the pandemic year, it went down to 2 and even lower because gas was available, but the demand was not there. Now we have restored demand and gas is available. It's just not delivered to Europe at the moment in enough quantities. One, because of LNG is going to Asia, more to Asia as it was before. That's not a new factor on the market. But most importantly, because Gazprom is not delivering its usual quantities. In fact, it's delivering 35% less gas to Europe this summer and this month and next month than it used to deliver in previous years.
A question for Svetlana. Some in the Biden administration reportedly are kind of irritated that Ukraine Zelensky government is kind of continues to bring up Nord Stream 2 and the U.S. position on kind of giving a free waiver to Germany on Nord Stream 2 in light of sanctions. I mean, do you think the Zelensky government will continue to be pressing the United States on this issue really hard? Or will they just kind of be a good ally and just kind of stop complaining so much publicly and privately?
Well, we are coming from a position that Nord Stream 2, as Timothy, I think, outlined in his first intervention, it's not only about danger to, to decrease the transit fee, and therefore there will be less money to our state budget. The thing is that Russia depends on the pipeline, on Ukrainian pipeline at the moment. It needs the Ukrainian pipeline to transit its gas, to transit the commodity to Europe. It wants to be a reliable and predictable partner. Also, I would like to say that EU needs Ukrainian pipeline because they want to have that gas, right? If Russia is not dependent on Ukrainian pipeline, if Europe is not dependent on this pipeline, we are losing in a way this security deterrent, right? So we are much more vulnerable in terms of those security threats that we are facing in Russia's in Putin's face, right? So Putin proved to be unpredictable. Putin proved to get as far as we allow him to get. So we do not predict that Putin will stop in its hybrid and also military aggression against Ukraine. Well, in the first place, the Nord Stream 2 has been started deliberately to create a pipeline which will bypass, which will detour Ukraine, right? Because our capacity allows Russia to increase its supplies by 3, right? It allows, at the moment, they don't need additional pipeline. They don't need additional capacity. They can use Ukrainian pipeline to deliver its gas to European consumers in the shortest and most safest way possible. But they digged up those 20 or 10 billion euro on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, in the middle of the Green Deal emergent project, deliberately to make the point and to use it as an instrument against Ukraine. So coming from that position, I'm trying to say that we are not complaining, we are saying that there is a proper danger, there is a threat, and US, our strategic partner, we have strategic partnership, and US has invested a lot of money and effort in Ukraine in its effort to become a reliable Euro-Atlantic partner and to be the leader in the region of the transformation of this region, of the know-how of how to become from a post-Soviet country transform into the proper democratic leader, proper democratic ally, which will impact the further transformation of the post-Soviet area, including Russia itself. So our position is very clear. We are partners, and yes, we need this partnership to stop this hybrid aggression and military aggression. And Nord Stream 2 is one of the instruments in this aggression. So if Biden administration wants to pursue its proclaimed policy as democracy against autocracy as one of the most important principles of their government, I think that Nord Stream 2 is a great example, is a great way for them to show how it is working.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is going to pretty much conclude our session for today.
I wanted to.
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead,
Glenn.
Margarita.
Just wanted to answer Simina's question about whether we expect the gas prices to go down. I said it's all market conditions, but watch what Gazprom is doing with the advanced bookings of capacities in pipelines. Right now, they book Yamal at 33%, 1/3 of its capacity. Even Yamal, which doesn't go through Ukraine. Yamal Europe goes through Belarus to Poland and to Germany. At the moment is booked at 1/3 of its capacity, which means that Russia is not delivering enough gas to Europe, regardless how it's fulfilling contracts. If in December, for December, the capacities are booked higher, the price might go down. Slightly, not completely, but for the month of November, I think the prices are going to stay high, pretty much rocket high. They just went up 18% on Monday after Gazprom did not book additional capacities, neither in Ukraine nor in Yamal Europe.
That's a great point, Margarita. And the fact that it's 1/3 of it has been booked is pretty interesting. Does anybody else have any parting comments? I didn't want to shut off too early, but it just
Maybe
Tim, you're good.
Yeah, just one final thing. I think in the end, the US, Trump and Biden administrations dropped the ball on Nord Stream 2, right? It makes Ukraine more insecure, it makes Europe more insecure. And I think particularly with the Biden administration, I think their obsession with China is deeply worrying, I think, to Europe, right? I mean, it seems to it seems to have boxed off Russia and be less understanding of the challenges from Russia than I think many people hoped, and its inability to think through properly the implications of Nord Stream 2, I think leaves Ukraine and Europe and traditional allies, I think, questioning Biden's early commitment to reestablish traditional alliances, right?
I would agree with you. I mean, certainly from the Washington perspective, it does look like the effort to re-engage Russia. Some people have questioned that, whether, effort to get, even the Trump administration tried to buy and get Russian support against China. And I think that it's still unclear if any of those strategies have succeeded or not. So, but it's clear the Biden administration has invested a lot on trying to improve relations with Germany, but what are the geopolitical costs of doing that? And we're starting to see that. But I think the last thing that we all agree on is that Nord Stream 2 is an instrument, and it's a geopolitical instrument being used against Europe. And so it will continue to be used, and we will continue to kind of examine and look at that at Jamestown Foundation. We'd like to thank everybody today for joining the discussion, and we'll be posting this event online on YouTube. So if you missed it, please look at the Jamestown YouTube channel, subscribe to it if you get a chance, and we'll be looking forward to seeing all of you again in the near future. So have a great weekend, and everyone be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.